Noah Tishbi, in your video about Al Jazeera's Shireen Abu Akleh, you have a point, but you also mislead. It's true that the International Federation of Journalists tracked thousands of journalist deaths in hostile action in the past 30 years or so. Some are my colleagues. As a veteran foreign correspondent, as a citizen of the world, I'm horrified, no less than you. Journalists' rights should be protected, their security should be assured, for the good of society, because they perform, often very bravely, an indispensable service. But what concerns you is that Shireen's death in the West Bank received more attention than the vast majority of the others in the IFJ report. It did, but there's a reason. The vast majority of these others were mostly locals, known only locally, killed by local forces in an undemocratic country. A tiny handful were reporters who appeared for international media in front of the camera. These are not worth more as individuals, but the question at hand is what draws people's eyes, ears, hearts, and minds, and that is when people who are famous or even just familiar are killed. It isn't right, but it's human nature. That is why the death of an on-air journalist who is one of the main faces of a very important global platform was so shocking. That does not explain all of the indeed extreme outpouring, but probably does account for most of it. You ascribe the difference to anti-Semitism. As a son of Holocaust survivors who suffered real anti-Semitism, I find facile use of that word unbecoming. There is a simpler and truer explanation, and that is that Shireen died in the context of Israel's occupation of the West Bank, which is one of the few major policies by any player in the world that is almost uniformly detested. I know, the world oversimplifies. It does. There is an excellent argument for rooting out terrorists connected to the outrageous murders recently on Israel's streets. Yes. There can even be a security argument for militarily controlling the West Bank, at least partly, for a while. And yes, the Palestinians have missed good opportunities to do a partition deal, no doubt. But the fact remains that there is no other country in the world that claims to be democratic that for over half a century now controls millions of people who cannot vote in its elections while building towns for one group only, for Jews only, who can vote and have democratic rights, literally across the highway. That is probably unique, and if you're looking for a source of any anti-Semitism that does exist, you need look no further than the settlements and the occupation. So, well done in standing up for Israel, Noah. You're a celebrity who cares. But don't defend the indefensible. And yes, rest in peace, Shireen.